Well, welcome back to the 8th grade painting project, part number 5. And you should, by now, have what you see in front of you pretty well drawn out. There is some stuff in the background I'm considering adding just to break up the background a little bit, because it is rather just a lot of painting of the same material in the background. So I am going to draw some things back there, and I think I'm not going to draw anything complex, seriously, just stripes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to visually divide this up into fifths, meaning from this tabletop to the top of the painting. Now I could do this by measuring it, and so for instance, if I were to measure it off, I would see that it's about 10 inches. And so that means I could make a marking every 2 inches. You could visually estimate it, but this would probably make a more accurate series of markings. So I'm just marking every 2 inches. And then with a long ruler, or you can use a short ruler, but you would have to be very careful about what you're doing. So I am going to draw horizontal lines that kind of resemble some sort of paneling in the background, I suppose, or wood grain of some sort. Okay, so I'm just going to start here, and I'm going to continue this, and it passes behind all of our objects. Okay, so that would be my first line. Now, since I'm going to be using, and I have in the past already, I'm going to switch over to a dark colored pencil to finish this work with, so it's more visible. So I'm going to hold my ruler down firmly and continue on. Okay, so this at least will give it a sense of horizontal movement. Everything right now is kind of static, meaning it doesn't look like it's moving very much. So we're going to go to our next dot there, and we're going to make this parallel as much as we can, perfectly horizontal. Hit it in here, comes over here, passes behind our goblet, and then behind the bottle, and then exits the side of the picture. We'll do the same thing at the next one. And this horizontal mark kind of leads us through the cheese and the stand and to the little platform that the glass and bottle are resting on. And lastly, this right here will make this chair pop out a little bit more distinctly against its background. So if we go into here, then we'll see this, then this will all be obscured, but it will reappear here and then here again. Now that should give us a much more visually interesting experience when we prepare to move on in this painting now. Okay, so we're going to go on back to where we left off, which was with the tangerine color, as I recall, some time ago. It seems like I've been here it seems like I've been painting a lot here lately, ladies and gentlemen. So let's take our mixing card. I'm going to go ahead and you shouldn't do this yourself at home. And this could be dangerous. Don't try it yourself at home. You should leave your painting card on the sidelines, not set it on your painting. However, I'm making a demonstration and people have to be able to see what I'm doing. So I'm going to cover up the cheese stand right now, because we're still working on that kind of salmon colored, tangerine colored striping to get going with. So when we did this yesterday, it was kind of orange, like typical orange, and we added a bit of white into it, and that kind of chalked it up and deadened the way it looked. So let's take like we're probably going to need quite a bit of this. We better take like 4 scoops of the yellow. Come on, yellow. There we go. And try to get all of that off the brush, so you don't, and you better clean out your paintbrush. You should get into the habit of doing that on a regular basis. Other students will be using these paints in a subsequent class, and so since we do block scheduling with the exploratory classes like art, then somebody else is going to use this paint, so please don't mess it all up, and clean your brush out and dry it. You get better results anyway. Now the red is very potent. We can probably just take 1 scoop of the red. This may already be a little bit too much red. but we're going to have to live with what we made yesterday, and this is how I recall we made it yesterday. So now sometimes, and it bothers me to have to go out and put more yellow into something, but I may have to put more yellow into this. Alright, I'm going to do exactly what I was discussing, showing you that you need to work with a clean brush, leave the paint unpolluted for the next group, and this should do the job. Okay, so we just get this all scraped together like you hear me saying all the time. I know you can read my mind half the time. I say everything the same all the time. So we're scraping together this so it's in like a tight little pile. We're going to need enough of it to get through 2 more stripes, and as a result of that, we're also going to that's a lot of painting, so we're going to need quite a bit of it, and we may use it again later. So if we keep it scraped into a nice little pile like that, then we're going to be alright. Now that's kind of a regular orange color. It's shiny to you all with the camera on it, but it's kind of regular pumpkin orange. So now I'm going to rinse out my brush because I'm going to be adding some white to this. And the target color is this kind of strange tangerine meets salmon color. So I'm going to take probably a pretty good serving of that white. That looks good. Put it right in there. And scrape all that into one uniform color. And so the target color should match what we put on yesterday. And if it doesn't, well, we'll just have to do our best to make it match by altering the color that we're mixing up right now. Okay, so what I'm noticing is mine's getting very peach colored. So I believe that what I'm going to need is a bit more red in it in order to affect it. Maybe I might try a little yellow first. Okay, so I'm going to clean that off. And I'm going to take probably some yellow first. Let's see what happens here. I think this is going to do it. Alright, so I've got kind of a peach color now. And that's pretty close, but I think it's going to need just a tiny bit of red in there to get it as close, pretty close to yesterday's work. Or last session. I don't know precisely when yesterday was. So let's take I'm going to take a dose of red. You can always put more in, and I can see that this will have an effect. Yeah, that's working. And maybe one more red. Alright, so it's the color mixing in the 8th grade projects that takes the time, see? Especially when we're interrupted between sessions. Alright, now I've got some sort of a pinkish, salmony, burnt orangey color of some sort here, so I'm going to just go ahead and use it. And I've got a lot of it on my brush right now, so let's see what happens when we put it on there. Boy, I'll tell you what, it is very salmon colored comparatively speaking. So I may have to... Well, we will alter this eventually, and so we are going to be painting over the painting. And we get it all blocked in. So right now we're in the portion of making a painting where we're just putting down the base coats of our colors, and so it can be slightly different without any sort of real detrimental effect on the outcome of the project. Okay, so that's... Yeah, and I see it's funny because now I'm getting more of the peach color showing through. So sometimes it's funny wherever you get the paint from in the puddle makes a bit of a difference as to the way it looks. Alright, so I'm hoping y'all's projects are coming along as well as this one is. I'm pretty satisfied with this is an old subject that we have dealt with years ago, but for all kinds of reasons we've never been able to get back to this particular painting. So we've always traditionally been doing a painting of a covered bridge or a lighthouse. However, I think that this one really has the most value as far as a painting goes, in order to unify all of the various other units that we went through this quarter. You know, the design unit and also the drawing unit as well. So this really is just putting together all of the learning that took place in the previous units. The other paintings also do that, but this is somewhat more complex painting, and so it's appropriate for 8th graders now. I think we've made a lot of progress in the art education program over the years, and so I think it's about time to re-examine this particular more traditional academic style painting. And if you look through an art history book, you'll notice that some of the greatest painters of all time, believe it or not, have painted bowls of fruit. You go to the art museum, there's bowls of fruit everywhere. Am I a big lover of bowls of fruit paintings? I am not. But it does have instructional value, and if you're going to take the time to make a project anyway, you should probably try to do a good job on it and turn it into an actual work of art instead of, you know, just rushing through it to get it done. Now, this is going to touch our background line that we just made there in a kind of unusual way. It just did that. So sometimes the outcome of what you do with one portion of a drawing that's going to be a painting affects the outcome of another portion of it. Now I am putting my hand on my painting, but I am being extremely careful to lay it in areas where I don't have wet paint. And it's a good idea to get also into the habit of checking the bottom of your hand. If you're going to do that, you know, look at it, the bottom of your hand, and say, oh, okay, I might have paint on it, before you set it down right on the pear and ruin something that you've spent a lot of time working on. And that's a very frustrating experience. Carelessness really makes you crazy when you realize you could have prevented it. Same for if you're just painting a house or a room. You get careless and you end up knocking the whole can of paint onto the carpet. That kind of stuff is nuts. Okay, now these colors are different somewhat, but I don't find it unattractive, so I'm going to live with what I've done and embrace it, because I know that it's going to be a while to do this painting, and I will come back to all of these various areas to dress them up in the next layer of the painting. So what we're doing right now is basically what you would be doing in a coloring book, kind of just trying to get all the big areas colored in first, and then go to the details, which we would paint over top of what we've already done. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's continue. So when you start putting the whites and the black together into the painting and altering the colors with them, it really opens up a huge number of options as far as value changes go. So, you know, when you make one color and you want a very bold difference between that color and the next color which it touches, then that's a great time to use, you know, shading or tinting of those colors in order to make that stand out, or even use, you know, some of your color theory about opposite colors, complementary colors stand out fantastic against each other. So knowing that, you can define edges of things, objects, images in your painting without ever having to really outline them. The two colors where they meet each other make that very, very visually abrupt change from one color to the next color, and that way you don't have to outline things. Now, a lot of artists have outlined things in the past, and it does, sometimes it looks attractive, but the main reason that you can see how one thing ends and the next image begins is simply by change in its value or its color. And so we can take advantage of that by knowing a little bit about vision and how human eyes and our brain process colors. Alright, and that is a nicely controlled paint mark right there. See, right where that green pear touches this salmon orangey background, I don't have to outline that. It stands out very clearly against that. Let's give this some focus and see what happens here. A little bit. Okay, that may look a little, I think that's a little clearer. Okay, now I've just got to finish this stripe down here. The bowl is sitting nestled up into that corner there. It's funny about paint because you mix up one color and it goes on really nice and smoothly without hardly any effort, and then you mix up another color and you gotta fight with it to get it to come off the brush and to give you the kind of coverage you would like. So you never know kind of what you're going to get, and that's affected a lot simply by temperature and atmospheric conditions too. So low humidity causes your paint to dry out faster. High humidity causes it not to dry out faster. So especially when you're outdoors and if the sun is hitting you, it's going to make your paint dry very quickly right on the brush, and that's something that is a problem with house painting as well, or painting rooms. The surface that you're painting on gets hot from being exposed to the sun, and then it starts to dry right on the paint, dries right on the brush before you even have a chance to paint it on. It's frustrating. So there's always, each day is kind of a new adventure with painting. Sometimes you just got to struggle through problems with it. And then you find solutions, amazingly. And the next time that happens to you, if you're conscious, if you're paying attention to all of these things that happen when you make a painting, that learning can be carried over into another portion of the creation of your painting. Alright, let's see what we got going here. So we've finished our stripes for now, at least the blocking in phase of it. And now we're kind of looking at advancing to our next part of this. Now, I think we might go with the grapes next, simply because we need to make up some violet. And by doing that, I think we're going to, you know what, I may also go back with some of my salmon there. It would look good over top of the stripes I've already painted, wouldn't it? We'll have to think about that. I don't want it to all dry out before I reconsider. Let's see, so I said we need to make some violet. And so we're kind of looking for grape jelly purple, of course. So I've got my mix card off screen here. And let's go with that grape jelly purple. It's probably going to be equal amounts of red and blue. So if we take like 2 reds, maybe 3 reds, and we clean out our brush, because somebody else might use our paint card in the next period. And then we're going to pick up, let's see, probably we want this to be grape jelly purple. If we go with 3 large scoops of the blue, we may have to remix a little bit, but we'll see about that. So, alright, so that's what I've got. 3 large scoops of the blue. The target color is, of course, grape jelly purple, not reddish brown. So we scrape all that into a tight pile in the middle, so we get our, hopefully with any luck, grape jelly purple working here. Now, okay, I'm starting to get it. I'm hoping I got the right ratio and it stays together. Now it's getting a little bit on the reddish side, but it's still looking like, you know, grape jelly. I might have to go with just a little more. I don't know, man. It looks pretty good. There is some blue trapped on the brush there, so maybe if I get that mixed in with it, it'll give it just that last little boost of blue it needs. And I think I was right. Sometimes you get it right on the very first try, ladies and gentlemen. And in this case, I gotta say I'm pretty impressed with myself. Now this we're going to be painting in the grapes, and this is some detailed work. So you better rinse out your brush. Make sure it's clean and dried out, so there's not a lot of polluted rinse water in it, and you've got a nice, you know, fine point on it. So you just take your fingers, and your fingers are clean, and point it a little bit, and then we can get to work on it. All right, so I've got my grape jelly purple right here, and we're going to just, I like to work at the top and work my way downward, and that's just the way I work. So. Now these are grapes, and so they should be round, and we can plump the grapes out a little bit from where they're drawn at, so they all are almost completely touching each other, or are in fact touching each other. So this is kind of tedious work right here, and can take a while. So you gotta be patient and focus. Alright, so we got a grape, and then, you know, repeat till finished. So my next grape, see how it just has that micro contact with that other grape. And that's why it's important to only use just the controlled point of the brush. If you have good circles for your grapes, then that's easy to follow. If you've got really lopsided grapes, you might have to struggle with this. It might be a good idea to redraw portions of it before you attempt it. Okay, that grape looks okay too, so I'm going to leave that grape alone and go to the next grape. And so they should be just large enough to go all the way and touch the next color, so that you don't have any real stray pencil markings showing up. And that violet, that grape jelly purple right up against that yellow of the banana really pops out. You want to have just that smallest amount of contact between the grapes. So this kind of thing could take a whole class period right here, because it's just hyper detailed work. Alright. Now we're going to start on these over here. Now I normally say, you know, let's do the largest areas first. That's my theory about working a lot of times. However, there's sometimes you probably need to start with more complex material and get it out of the way, so that when you don't have to have so much mental focus, like painting in large areas of the background, it doesn't require the same amount of mental focus as the detail work sometimes. So there are times when you probably should start, you know, you warm up a little bit with something like the stripes, right? And then you get right to some details that you need to address, so that you don't have you don't lose your mental focus, and your eyes don't get real tired. Well, that is just really kind of messing with me. There we go. Okay, that looks pretty good too. So we're just going to keep on keeping on with the grapes, and until we get as far as we can. Oh, I just laid my hand in. Well, you know what? That paint is dry, fortunately for me, right? because if I would have just smudged up a lot of other stuff, I'd have been a little upset with myself for my sloppy work habits that I preach so much to the students about. But I do practice them, so I generally am practicing when I'm preaching, especially in an instructional environment where we're talking about the fundamentals of what it is that we do, the concepts, basic concepts. So if you get those things figured out, the rest of it will come much easier to you. Okay, come on. Just barely. To find this touch, the master's touch. Round that grape out. Come on, round it out. I think I'm going to leave it alone. That seems pretty rounded, but I really am fighting with this one little part right here. I really don't appreciate the way it's harassing me here. There we go. Alright, moving on. See, I mean, it's if you're easily bored, then tedious work like this, I guess, would be a punishment, wouldn't it? But I'm not easily bored, and so I'm easily bored with politics. I'm currently easily bored with television, so painting is a much better use of my time. Creating lessons is a fantastic use of my time. Okay. Okay, I'll go with it. And we'll just keep on. This is a rather large grape right here. Ooh. A little reckless there with the brush. Alright. Many years ago I was painting a bowl of fruit in a painting class I was taking in college, and we had grapes. They were fake. They were sitting all in a table in an arrangement, so they were not real grapes, and they were pretty much round, like marbles. And so I had, made my preparatory drawing and was painting it all in, and I got to the grapes, and I decided to find a cork that was the size I needed, and I took the cork and I stuck it into a puddle of paint, and I used that to basically block print my grapes. And then when they were all, essentially the same size and very nice and circular, I went back and painted details on top of them. So, people were fascinated with that. They're like, how did you get them all so the same size? Well, it's a secret, trade secret. If I told you, I would never be able to do it again. I would be giving up the secrets of the guild, Artist and Painters Guild. But really, it was just, I just used a cork and some paint. Now, I had to use a paintbrush to do the details on it. Okay, that's looking pretty good too. So just keep at your paint, at the grapes, and if we run out of time, well, then we'll just do more of this in the next session. And that's kind of how art class really goes. We work for, as much as we can get done in one limited time session, and then we pick up where we left off on the next day. So, this entire painting is going to be created through the use of red, yellow, blue, black, and white. And so that's really going to challenge your ability to mix colors. And I think you can see already that it's difficult to mix up the same color in the next session. But that's not a real problem. We're going to, paint over top of a lot of this anyway. So we build paintings up in layers. Not necessarily like crayon it all in, like with a crayon and a coloring book. But right now we're in the process of blocking in a painting, is what this is called. So we're putting all of the important colors down, and then we can make reflections, and shadows, and textures, and patterns, and variations in our colors, reflections. All of these can be added to the base coat, or the blocking in coat. Okay, so starting to get some grays. So if you're dedicated to what you're doing when you're painting anything, and you just kind of approach it in a steady, consistent, patient pace, especially if you've got a deadline. Sometimes you have to you start at the day that thing is due, and you backwards count from the day it's due to the day it is right now, and you ask yourself, how many days do I have to complete my work? And then you have to plan it out so that it gets done by the deadline, or maybe just a little earlier if possible. So if you should have a problem, you've got that time built into that time cushion built into your schedule. Or if you get done a little bit ahead of time, you can really critique your work and add more value to it. So you've got to, people don't think that making artwork is work, but until somebody puts a deadline on a project they're attempting to do, and then it gets really serious suddenly. And that's a shock to a lot of high schoolers that move on to study art in college, is that the workload just in the projects is overwhelming. Some of the academic subjects, the art history courses and art appreciation courses, are an overwhelming amount of knowledge that you have to acquire in order to be able to pass these courses. And you have to be able to demonstrate that on written exams and explanations and presentations. And then also in the studio classes, which is the drawing and the painting and sculpture, photography, video, etc., you have to do projects. And these projects that we do in the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade are pretty difficult. They are nothing, though, time-consuming like the projects that you do in college and in graduate school, which are usually give you a theme to work around, or a concept, and then you develop your own ideas on that concept, and you present those ideas to your instructor, and you all have a conversation about what is a good approach, and what your theories are on your color schemes, and how you're going to go about planning the time out to do this, and is it too big a project? It's a great idea, but do we need to scale the size of the project back so it makes it doable in the amount of time that's available? So there's just a lot of considerations go into these things, even though it's a class project. But at the college level, if you're going to go into the arts, or you plan on going into the arts as a career, you really need to pay attention and work hard, and it's as hard as any other subject, and you get tired of the subject matter sometimes. Art history was fascinating, but there were so many dates to learn. There's so much to learn about the lives of the artists that we studied, and the name of the works that they did, and when they were produced, and just, it was so overwhelming. And at the same time, you have paintings and drawings and other art projects going on that have due dates associated with them as well. So it's not as easy as people think, and there's not always really precise answers to questions in art, especially with studio work when you're making the artwork. You do a lot of things through just trial and error sometimes, and sometimes it works out for you. Sometimes you have a happy accident that also works out for you. Sometimes you make it just a complete mess of work you put a lot of planning and time into, and it's easier just to start over sometimes. And call that previous mistake a study of some sort. And it helps you learn so you can take that same concept to a new and better level in your next attempt. It's all learning. Even if you fail miserably at something, it's all simply just learning. If you can get something out of it, you can apply in your next one. Alright, this is I'm starting to see some grapes forming here. We are almost out of time. I just happened to notice that. I think I will finish the grapes, at least the base coating of the grapes here, and then that is going to be a session for us there, I do believe. And I don't want to have to remix up any more violet on the next session, so my grapes will match. So we'll have to kind of fool around with our stripes a little bit. I may even go back and repaint them. Alright, so practice making grapes. Alright, that is looking pretty good though. Come on now, grape. Alright, I think I got two more I gotta work with here. Maybe a little more paint might be appropriate. So I hope your project's looking good. I hope your e-learning experience is a positive one here, and you're able to follow along with the instructions in our video lessons here, and apply, everything that you've learned in the lectures and acquired through the application and the projects, and that you'll be able to make a piece of artwork in the physical classroom that is, an accomplishment. That in itself is an achievement. Okay, so the grapes are all kind of overlapping a little bit. Looks like I got room for maybe one more grape in here. I may have to put in another grape. So see, this one is overlapping right there. So you have to leave that little micro space in between them. And we're going to put one more grape tucked in here, maybe a small grape. Alright, now I'm struggling with the end of the brush here. Sometimes when you paint a lot, you end up wearing a brush out. Most people don't think